All right, good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Cunningham Township Board meeting. As a note, within this meeting, we will have another meeting of the Decennial Committee. And following that, we will have City Council meeting at 7 p.m. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here?
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Hersey, Ms. Colasetti,
Here.
Ms. Bishop, Ms. Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin, Ms. Chenoweth, Ms. Awana.
All right, approval of the minutes. There are no approvals of the minutes. Additions to the agenda. All right, seeing none. Public participation. Would anybody like to speak in front of the Cunningham Township Board? If so, please come up to the mic. Nope. All right. Committee to verify bills. Danielle?
Good evening. Let's see. So this, let me just scroll down to the, sorry. Okay, here we go. This month we had $33,662.15 in town fund expenditures. We had $118,208.18 in general assistance fund expenditures for a total of $151,870.33. I'm happy to answer any questions about the bills that were included in the packet.
Questions of the bills? Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved. I'll second.
Moved by Jaya and seconded by Grace. Any discussion? Need to be a roll call? Bills?
I think it's voice.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, those bills are approved. Reports of officers.
I will be brief since we have a Decennial committee. So I think the primary things that I wanted to highlight from this time period is just the high number of food requests that we're getting right now. I did confirm with Representative Ammon's office that the state of Illinois is not kicking in a work requirement for food, which was initially listed on the IDHS website and wasn't changed until basically the date it was supposed to kick in. So they've renewed that, and it has to do with the high level of unemployment that we have in the state. So that's one of the justifications. That is hugely great news because I don't know what we would do if we had a work requirement. Because then there was no guidance on whether or not how we would exempt people for being homeless or for having disabilities. Like, I just think there wasn't a lot of thought put into that part of the congressional act. So that's great news. That said, we max out every week in food assistance. So I just wanted to point out we are looking at kind of how we do food assistance because it's become a much more integral part of what we do at Township. And so I'm analyzing Solidarity Gardens and our food assistance program, and I may be bringing some changes to that to better provide that service. Let's see, the only other thing I want to point out, and I had invited you all, and we're inviting the public to, we have French friends coming to do aerial acrobatics and a play called the Circo Infinito play with juggling, acrobatics, aerial performance, and that will be at the Independent Media Center on Saturday. We're going to actually dress up at 10 o'clock, go to the indoor farmers market, and with instruments at 10:30, and we're working with the Land Connection. We are, we're publicizing that you can use your link card to turn $1 into $4. So if you bring your link card to the indoor farmers market, you get $4 of produce for that $1, which is really great. Produce, eggs, bread, there's a lot of different things you can convert. So we're trying to help to publicize the indoor farmers market with our cloning. And then we are going to go back to the IMC at 11:30. There's a play for free. It's all ages. It's our friends Jamal Partout, which means I feel bad all over is the name of their organization. and they do humanitarian clowning. And then we have a appreciation lunch, and it's by invitation only, and I've invited the town board along with our staff and our interns and volunteers. So if you're able to make it as town board members, clerk, and likewise, if you could please RSVP to me no later than tomorrow. I will also just say that, we also have an artwork contest, so we're eliciting from township participants of all ages artwork, and we will provide $100 to the 5 winners to use their artwork on township materials. So our thank you cards will, and our, thank you and our congratulations cards will actually use artwork. If we don't get enough submission from township participants, we'll be opening that up to the community. So you'll see that on our social media account, and we appreciate people sharing that information.
Questions? Chris?
Thanks for the report. With winter being about 5 minutes away, I just wanted to ask how some kind of status report on emergency funding for emergency housing, whether it be hotels or whatever's available, but are we ready to face the winter, so to speak?
This is a great question. I think that our community has struggled for a long time to have enough shelter, and we have not had enough shelter in the winter months. I think one of the exceptions is there was a time when I believe there were 2 years in a row where we were able to basically say we don't have anyone that we can find who are on the streets. So we're trying to achieve that. I think See You at Home moving out has opened up space at Strides. So we appreciate the city council permitting that on Springfield Avenue. But essentially Strides does, and when it is under a certain temperature, Strides opens up additional cots, and they've been authorized by the fire department in Champaign to do that. That said, we are actively working with, it says, if you look at the street outreach report, that pretty much is regularly looking at how many folks are on the street that we're working with. Right now, so last month we served 38 households representing 46 residents. So those are folks who are actively unsheltered. If they're staying at Strides, they have a different program where their staff works with them. So our staff is basically working with unsheltered residents, and this last year we're looking at about 46. And I would say that is most likely, those are we look for residents in places throughout Champaign-Urbana and to some degree Rantoul. We do serve the whole county. We will respond to calls during business hours, but that's the number of folks that we're looking at. We do see that sometimes in the winter, people will allow family members to live with them for short periods of time. But right now, there is concern that there will be people outside this winter. We don't have a wait list for our family shelter, so that's been a huge success as we've been expanding. With regard to individuals, as you know, we received an emergency housing transitional housing grant, and that is allowing us to expand our services from 16 to 22. And we've been staffing up for that, but we intend to add 4 more units December 1st. So we plan to have the staff in place that we can basically expand those units. Those are for medically fragile folks and people with disabilities or other risk factors staying in congregate shelter, and all of those referrals come through Strides or See You at Home. So they don't refer directly to or through our street outreach program. Our street outreach program, usually our staff member will accompany people to try to get into the shelter, and if they have some reason why they are not able to stay, then essentially they would then be tracked into our program. So those are 4 additional units, but I think that part of the big picture is that basically See You at Home moved out and Strides moved in, and we didn't get additional beds from that process, except for a small men's house and a small women's house. So in the bigger scheme of things, I think that, and I know See You at Home has desire to grow, and I know there are other organizations looking to grow in Champaign-Urbana, but I feel like, you know, we've taken a small step. It wasn't, we didn't significantly increase our shelter capacity with that step yet. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Chandra, did you have a question? Oh, okay. I have two questions if nobody else has questions. My first question was, I noticed that you have a partnership with the Vision Clinic providing free prescriptions.
Yep.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that program.
Yes, I would love to talk about that program, and let me make sure I'm giving accurate information. So I have met with Avicenna numerous times. They are a free healthcare clinic that's based in the basement of public health. They're originally started by Muslim doctors in the community, and they continue to provide services, and they host a lot of medical students from the U of I and Carl Medical School partnership. They have an eye clinic. They've opened an eye clinic where basically you walk out with a prescription. It's free. You don't have to have an ID, which is huge. You don't have to have insurance. You could have insurance. Maybe you have insurance and your copay is too much, or your deductible is too much and you can't afford it. A lot of insurance doesn't cover eyes at all. I don't know why, because it's part of our body, just like our teeth, but for some reason it's not included. And so, let's see. They are having an eye clinic, and they are going to, the last one, we sent a blast out, it was yesterday. The next eye clinic is gonna be from 1 to 4 p.m., December 17th. And Avicenna is at 201 West Kenyon Road where public health is located. And they will do vision checks and prescriptions for glasses or contacts, glaucoma screening, retinal checks, very important for people like me who have terrible eyes, or managing eye symptoms. They are also going to open OBGYN clinic on December 1st. And we send out a regular update about services in the community every Tuesday, and anyone can sign up at ctso.org. It's the first thing that pops up when you go to the website. You don't have to search for it. You put your email in, and you'll get every email on Tuesdays. And so we'll continue to share information because it's always changing about different clinics.
And then my second question, and perhaps I should have asked this when the bills were there, do we have kind of a reserved number of hotel rooms? Or I was looking because it's the same amount every time.
Yes, we do. So I have negotiated with our hotel partners. I and our program director negotiate with our hotel partners a fixed amount of $45 a night. And we get a stack, we get a certain number, and we get that rate, which is wonderful because we are dedicating those units to our program. So yeah, you'll see a fixed amount, and 100% of that is paid for through our state grants.
Right, thank you. Assessor, do you have a report? Okay, all right. We don't have any unfinished business, new business. So the first item is resolution number T 2023-11012R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a contract with Flex for FSA and LSA benefits.
Yes, so essentially we have a current flexible spending account that goes along with our health insurance. We're moving providers because we found a provider with lower administrative fees. LSA refers to a lifestyle spending account, and I put in the budget, as you may recall, a wellness benefit for our staff. Staff who work in social services need wellness. I don't know, I could add more, but it's a stressful job, and so I've been trying to build in incentives for people to take care of themselves and their bodies. So the LSA would allow us to basically set up systems where people can swipe with a card at certain authorized vendors, like a gym membership, and have that paid for out of that benefit. Happy to answer any other questions.
Questions? Can I have a motion?
I'll move resolution number T-2023-11-012R, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a contract with Flex for FSA and LSA benefits.
Second.
Moved by Chandra, seconded by James. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that resolution passes. Next up is resolution number T, 2023-11-013R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign a contract with Blue Cross and Blue Shield for health insurance benefits.
This is a health insurance renewal. It is the same as we have had in the past, except we've added one more platinum option, which is the same price. It just has a different kind of deductible and out-of-pocket expense. And the amount that was quoted to us is within the budget that we have put forward. In fact, we'll likely come under budget in health insurance this year.
Any questions? James?
I'll make a motion if there are no
Okay.
questions. I move resolution number T-2023-11-013R, a resolution authorizing supervisor to sign a contract with Blue Cross and Blue Shield for health insurance benefits.
Second. Moved by James, seconded by Jaya. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries. Next up is resolution number T, 2023-11-014R, resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with the City of Urbana for a grant supporting municipalities for asylum seekers.
Yes, and I see Braden Belcher is in the audience as well, and we've been working closely with his office to put forward a grant with the City of Urbana and several immigrant partners in the community for asylum seeker services. The budget that we, the budget that we have landed on essentially has us do legal support, supplies. I was looking for the budget and I thought it was attached here, but essentially what we're doing is filling in gaps that our immigrant services partners either don't have capacity to offer or don't offer. One of the pieces that we'll offer is training for the immigrant services partners on navigating housing resources, so that's a piece as well. And it will essentially, these are additional dollars that will support Bridge to Home activities for those who have passed over the Mexican-American border as of, I'm gonna try to get this right, May of 2020, I believe, 2021. There's a specific stipulation. These are dollars that the state flowed through the municipal, what is it? I'm sorry, I thought I had the contract in front of me, so I'm going from memory. But essentially it is a municipal mayor's caucus or conference that received the dollars from IDHS, and then they did a competitive process, and the City of Urbana applied with us as a partner. So this is a pass-through grant.
Any questions? I have a motion.
I'll move resolution number T-2023-11-014R, a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign an agreement with the City of Urbana for a grant supporting municipalities for asylum seeker services.
I'll second. Moved by Chandra, seconded by Jaya. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, that motion carries. On to our meeting embedded into a meeting. So the next up on the agenda is the Decennial Committee, and I believe we have at least one additional member, if they wouldn't mind coming and sitting next to me. Oh, we have two. You know what? Ethan is not on the committee. Oh, Okay. Thank you. All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Here?
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Ms. Hersey, Ms. Colacetti. Here. Ms. Bishop,
Here.
Ms. Wilkin. Here. Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin, Ms. Chenoweth,
Here.
Ms. Awana.
Here.
Ms. Elliott, Michelle Jett.
Next up is public input. As there are no public people, we'll move on from that. And last up is research discussion. I assume that, Ethan, are you the one who's going to present on this? You'll have to turn on the
Yeah,
mic.
turn on the mic. I'll do a little introduction and then I'll pass it over to Ethan. So Ethan Garcia is with urban planning at the University of Illinois. He'll be getting his master's degree in May and he'll be with us for 2 semesters. Really excited to have him, and also just shout out to urban planning. We've had just some of the best interns from urban planning. So I proposed to Ethan that he basically staff and support the Decennial Committee, and he agreed. He has an interest in political science and policy. And so as we discussed when we created the committee, we're really looking at a 2-semester project that will help to look at local efficiencies and collaboration in government. And I had proposed a scope of work that basically looks at all of the townships in the county, since we hear from many of them all the time, and we aren't able to actually answer the questions oftentimes that we get, nor is the county clerk able to answer the questions, even though some of the documents should be there. And so, you know, this in many ways gives us an opportunity to reach out and establish those relationships with those townships and just get basic information. So I'm going to pass it over to Ethan to talk a little bit about what is being proposed in terms of the scope of work, and then in particular kind of the timeline of activities, so that you all, or the proposed timeline of activities, so that you are all aware of it. And I think what we're asking for is and then final deliverables, which is there will be a digital report as well as a presentation. Based on this, we would like to ask the Decennial Committee to vote on this as a scope of work. Certainly you could make changes to that scope, you know, as a majority can make changes to the scope of work, but this is what is being proposed. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Ethan share kind of the what the basics are and what it will look like, so you have an understanding of what's being proposed. I might fill in some details after that, and then we can have a discussion. How does that sound? Okay.
Hello. Again, my name is Ethan. It's nice to meet you all. I am a new intern for Cunningham Township, but I am familiar with this unit of government, as I have also had class with Danielle before a few years ago, and she had a wonderful presentation that really inspired me to apply when I saw the opening position to begin with. And in all honesty, I'm from Chicago, so I had no idea what a township was in general, but I have come to learn that they actually do have a lot of great power in their community if they dedicate the time and resources to them. And I think Cunningham Township is a great example of where they use their resources and publicize all the services that they provide very well. And within this research, we hope to compile what all the townships in the county do and allow the public to be able to find these resources in a compact way so that everyone can receive the services. And for the township that may not have services, maybe they are encouraged to enact similar services and provide similar types of resources for people, especially since Cunningham gets a lot of calls from people outside our township that we technically can't aid. And so it's a little devastating that even me already doing a bit of initial research of just the websites of the townships, I can't find some of the public officials or some of the services that's provided, or I can't find details about the services. So the biggest end product of this would be interactive PDF or or PowerPoint that would allow the public to just look it up very easily and allow to get access to all the resources or whoever they need to call to get the service or resource that they need.
I would just add that I wanted to put together a proposal that would be meaningful and impactful for the people we serve and the people we hear from. And I think that another piece of this will also be looking at our partnerships. So we'll be looking at townships outside, and we'll also be looking at our existing partnerships. We have 29 existing partnerships with actual formal MOUs. There's a number that, and I think that we would look to the Decennial Committee if there are other groups that we should be partnering with or really establishing formal relationships with. And that may include other townships, right? So it might be, this is an opportunity, and I know at one point the Rantoul supervisor was interested in joining our rental assistance program. So part of this will be reaching out to the new supervisor who's there, inviting them to the rental assistance consortium, and actually you can invite all of the townships who would like to participate in that rental consortium as part of this process. So we're really looking at building our partnerships countywide. We essentially, with grant funding, we are a countywide organization. Obviously, our levy dollars are exclusively for Cunningham Township. And I would say children who are served in Urbana schools as well. But other than that, we've been, so I think that we have it makes sense that we would move in this direction given that we're really becoming a countywide organization that provides important services, especially for the homeless. So with that, I wondered if you all had any clarifying questions before I open it up for debate. Is there specific questions that you have about the proposal that's on the table?
Questions? Oh, did you want to add something?
Oh, there we go. I'm curious, and maybe something like this would be better down the road if you're communicating with other counties on how they're going about this. Theoretically, I assume that all the counties are supposed to be doing this.
Correct. Every county in Illinois is required to have every township in Illinois is required to have a decennial committee.
Okay. Yeah, I found it helpful when I worked at the township to look at counties which had similar populations like McLean County and Bloomington Normal, because it would also make you feel much better about what you're doing. Mm-hmm. It's that the level of services you provide. I'm curious if anyone else is doing that.
So I just met with Mary Hess of DeKalb Township this last week. I get calls all the time from township supervisors. Yeah. There's a metro area coalition of townships I just learned about that is kind of the collar townships outside of Chicago. So we're going to join that, even though we're not exactly metro. We're kind of like, what do they call it? Micro-urban metro. But we're going to join that group because it's a lot of progressive township supervisors. And I get called because people want to come and take tours. So Mary's going to come and take a tour because she's interested in doing more around housing, because that is the big issue that everyone is seeing across the country. Waukegan, I mentioned Waukegan. Waukegan Township is a township that has homeless services. So they actually operate a shelter. It's one of the few. And I've reached out to their supervisor. I met with them at a toy conference and Township Officials of Illinois conference, and starting to kind of swap information. But I would say, generally speaking, yeah, I actually don't think there's, in City of Champaign now runs a pretty robust homeless shelter. Right. But between the two townships, I really think, we're unusual in that way. And so I'm trying to be in contact with other townships outside of the county to be able to provide, I basically say we're open source. If you want a policy or procedure, you don't have to FOIA for it. I'll just give it to you, and you can use that as your basis so you don't have to start from scratch.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Mm-hmm. And again, it would be good just to look at comparing counties and where Champaign County is a leader.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is Carol Elliott is our former supervisor of Cunningham Township. She said she worked for the township. I just want to clarify. She was Hefe. Okay.
But I did before I was the supervisor.
No.
Other questions? Grace?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation on this, and thanks for joining us, Ethan and Carol. If I could just step back, clarify, I'm trying to get some context, and apologize because I know you've explained this before. But yeah, it seems kind of vague, and I don't know if that is just actually how it is, kind of taking the step back on this public act. I don't know if you have I'm just curious if you had a little more background on like when this was passed, and you have in here to study efficiencies and report to the county board. And I think that this direction absolutely makes sense. Just curious on a little background on this act and how others might look at those efficiencies. Just seems like there's a lot of ways to interpret it, and I wasn't quite sure what direction we were going, and if you know how others are interpreting that.
I mean, I will use very plain speak because I'm a plain-spoken kind of gal. But basically, this public act was passed by the legislature in part because there are townships that may either not be providing services or the services are so duplicative that they really needed some pushing on the level of the legislature to talk about their relevance. And I think I would not say this during the reign of Ms. Elliott at all, because I was a trustee and I saw that we were oftentimes serving up to 200 people at any given time. But as you recall, the last supervisor had it down to 26 clients by the time she went from 175 to 26 general assistance clients and 4 years. And so leadership matters, and township is a very important resource. It's an entitlement that people receive general assistance. And if you think about it for a second, if you have a disability, you can't work, and you're waiting for the federal government to acknowledge that, which is a minimum of 2 years unless you're dying, then you need some kind of support, and township provides that support. And if they don't, then there really is no support. So this public act was essentially passed by the legislatures as kind of like this to townships. And so I looked at it as supervisor and said, okay, I don't do we could meet twice, and I think a lot of supervisors they're meeting twice and there's not much they're gonna do, and they'll report all is good to their county boards. I don't really like to do empty gestures, and I thought, well, how can I actually take this seriously? How could I improve township in my community? And how could we as a decennial committee? And I think the answer, given that I literally cannot find an address, phone number, or anything for some townships to direct people to the entitlement called general assistance, and I've talked to the clerk, and that office doesn't receive the documents that are required to be filed necessarily. I thought, well, the FOIA process is a really good process because they're going to have to reply. And if you saw in the FOIA, we're going to give people 3 weeks. It's stuff that should be on hand. It should be readily available. It's basics. Who are you? Where can we contact you? Do you offer general assistance to how many people? What does your application look like? Send us a copy of it. And, tell us how people could access your services. Right, so that's like very basic, and so I feel like we as a decennial committee of a high-performing township who's now working on a county level has an opportunity to provide this document, thanks to Ethan's labor, to provide the document, and I hope to work with the county executive to basically post it publicly on the county website. We'll have it on our website. Maybe the county clerk will the same, and it'll be, okay, it's a snapshot in time, but it at least gives some information about how. So that, I don't know if that answers your question, but it really is kind of like we want you all to look at your own relevance, and we want you to report to your county board about it. And I welcome that. I think it's a really good idea. I think we should, I think that it's really great for organizations and government entities to constantly look at how they can serve better and collaborate better. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to do so. And I promise not to send any of the nasty voicemails that I get as a result of this FOIA to any of you. I will take care of them myself.
James?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there are 1,400 and change townships in the state of Illinois, and unlike Cunningham Township, which functions and does what it's required to do, what it's meant to be for the citizens of the state of Illinois, a lot of those townships aren't able to do that. We talk about public assistance. Most of the townships that I'm familiar with in the county are also responsible for roads, and they are, having spent time on the county board, I know they are almost always dependent on the county to support them in doing any serious road project, because they do not have the wherewithal. So, in a state who competes regularly with a couple other states for the most number of units of government, it's important to look at those units of government and say, are they able to do what they need to do? And is there a better way to organize it in the long term? And so, it's not maybe targeted at us in Cunningham Township, because we function and we do what we're supposed to do, and we are doing a better job of it now than we've ever done before. But it is something, it's not an unreasonable question, particularly in some of these smaller rural counties, if they shouldn't be banding together their township capabilities into their county capabilities. And many of them have. There's like 20 counties in the southern part of the state which don't have townships anymore. They have precincts because they didn't need the layer of government that the county could provide to do the things that township was doing down there. I also suspect that they're not doing everything the township's supposed to be doing down there, but that's a different story.
Other questions? Jaya?
Kind of a comment too. I like this idea. I think it's a good approach to making sure we have a better sense for what's happening around us. You had mentioned, I think you said Waukegan that has the shelter, was it a different one? Waukegan?
Waukegan.
I'm curious, and it doesn't have to be part of this process, but one thing I've been thinking about a lot in our local community with, with Cunningham Township and Champaign Township having the shelters, what does that look like when there's turnover on this with the supervisor? So like I said, it doesn't have to be part of this project necessarily, but I think as we look at those efficiencies and we think long-term, considering these are government offices that are run by elected officials, thinking about what does that continuity look like? What is the sustainability? Because I would hate for someone else, Danielle, someday you get a break and someone else comes in and is like, this isn't a priority for me anymore. I think that's something that's of concern for me. And I think about that with strides as well, as what's the long-term plan if you end up with a supervisor who's not invested in the same way. So I guess maybe it might be outside of that scope, but I think when we're thinking about efficiencies and thinking about this model, that's something I think is worthy of some attention as well.
Could I respond to that?
Yeah.
Unless things have changed some, I think the board actually has power to keep things going, especially if, depending on which fund the expenses are, that it might not necessarily matter who the supervisor is if it's something the board wants to. Now, if you change board members, that's not a guarantee either, but I think there are ways to deal with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and certainly would hope that the board would step in, but I also think about, Danielle, your example of like what happened in between you two, right? That there's a lot of control that particular role holds as well. And so making sure we don't lose all that incredible, as we're talking about the remaining gaps, just thinking about, again, what needs to be in place to empower, or make sure that the town board is being mindful about that, especially if you do have someone who's not focused in that way.
What I hear is, and I get that question a lot, is this question of looking in the Decennial Committee, looking in part of its report, not only in terms of what are other townships doing, what do our partnerships look like, but also sustainability of our programs. I think it's great. Obviously, like the last thing I want to do is build something that washes away. And I appreciate Carol's statement, because I think, you know, I oftentimes say, you know, I am the kind of sole person over general assistance, but you all actually control the town fund. And so, and the town fund can fund all kinds of things. And you also, the levy is set about like how much money is going into general assistance versus town fund. I'm telling you all the ways you can hack, but basically like there is a way. And so maybe laying that out of like, how are it's not, I don't think it's unlike a nonprofit in that, you know, we have underperforming nonprofits in town, and oftentimes it's a leadership problem there. Sometimes it's a board problem. And so sometimes its scope has, you know, their relevance has changed, but they haven't changed. And so I actually think, I get that question a lot, and I'm always like, what, you know, you should also ask XYZ. I won't name names right now, but like, you know, you should also be looking at those places, because it really, in some ways, we actually get to elect our leader in Urbana, whereas when it's with a nonprofit, it's not like those with, you know, disabilities elected the head of PACE, or those with, you know, like it doesn't, in the world of nonprofits, actually, there's really, you know, it's kind of low accountability, and you can have a lot of problems with that. So I think in looking at township, I think it is helpful to look at the sustainability piece, and I will welcome any suggestions or thoughts on how to make sure that what we build together is protected beyond any particular leader. I think general assistance is one of those things where the supervisor is going to have a lot of control over small or large, but the other, like when you own property, or there, you know, there are certain things in which we do where it's much more stable. And in some ways, general assistance growing and shrinking, I mean, it was a big deal and it affected a lot of people, but it's only one piece of what we do right now. And so I think that, I think making sure that we, you know, let's look at that piece, but I think making sure that we own and we, you know, have built infrastructure. You know, I've built middle management, and so that has made a huge difference, because basically I have professional finance people and professional licensed social workers who are able to actually execute the programs. And so the supervisor really has a different role in some ways than they used to. It's expanded, but it's also much more focused on community partnerships and long-term visioning. So, but I think it's helpful for us to consider the scope of sustainability in the committee.
So I have two things. One is a comment and one is a question. Do you know what some of the other townships plan to do in their committees in the county?
I've only talked to our neighbor next door, and I think it's pretty, I don't have a lot of details as the answer. I don't. And, you know, if that's something that the committee would like for us to look at, maybe some of the counties that are similar size, particularly ones with college towns in them, we could look at that. I've got good relationships with Bloomington Normal. I could reach out. I actually didn't ask Mary about this. I should have. I was really focused on our EEO program and some of the things that they're doing there. But I could ask her as well. And there's several other progressive townships that we could ask the metro area townships what they are doing for their decennial committees.
And then the other, the comment that I had is I've been increasingly more aware that PDFs are not accessible documents. And specifically for people with low vision or being blind, people who are unable to use their hands, and I mean, keyboards, they have to use tabs, color blindness and so forth. So I would strongly encourage you to, if you're going to create a PDF as the final product, that you look into how accessible it is for people to be able to use screen readers and so forth, particularly because we have a lot of people who leverage township services that might have a disability.
Mm-hmm. That is a great comment. You can make PDFs accessible, but very few people do. I used to be an expert in that.
Very
area.
challenging.
It is very challenging. So we can discuss, maybe, we talked about potentially a website, like a mini website, so that it's clickable and that way it's more responsive. So I think it's a great comment.
All right. Yes, Darcy.
So mine is a comment. So as someone who works regularly within the FOIA process, I appreciate that you do have a disclosure in the FOIA request that they are public records. And looking through the bulleted list, I think this is a fantastic list. I think it encompasses a lot of what you guys are hoping to achieve. But I want to encourage, where possible, including the specific names of the forms, perhaps the ones that they are failing to submit to the county. Because if you are posing it as strictly a question or a concept, they can refuse to respond to that if it is not a specific record. Bodies are not required to create a record that does not exist. They are not required to respond to questions through the FOIA process. So that's more of like a caution type comment. I do not think you should remove the language that you currently have, but perhaps add to it if there is a form that contains that information, add that to that line item so that that is what you're specifically requesting.
It's a great idea. Thank you, FOIA officer. I went through that same training, and it's true.
All right, are there any last questions, comments? Chris?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback what James Quisenberry said, because you're right, James. It's a valid question to ask whether we need these townships all over the state of Illinois. However, I do want to stress, and I don't think you're implying anything less, but I'm just want to stress to any local media outlets that we here in Champaign-Urbana have fantastic townships who do enormous good work and are needed. End of comment.
Okay, all right, I think that is the full agenda. So we are adjourning the Decennial Committee.
Point of process, is it possible that we could get a motion that, so that basically our work is supported by the committee here? A motion to approve the scope of work with any particular changes you'd want to make?
Should we do a motion or a straw poll?
I'm going to procedurally suggest straw poll for approval, as it was advertised on the agenda as a discussion, not an actionable item, but we're informing the process. So I feel a straw poll is appropriate. It still grants you the consent.
James, you wanted to add something? No? Okay, all right. So all those in a straw poll, which means a thumbs up here, who agree with the proposed research. So people, the scope of work, thank you. So everybody but Ethan gets to vote on this one. So thumbs up if you approve the scope of work. 1, 2, 3, what is this? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, it's 10. All right, thumbs down if you disapprove. Okay, nobody.
That's
that
all.
good?
Thank you for the process.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ethan. So the Decennial Committee is adjourned. Thank you so much for coming out. And for no further business with the Cunningham Township Board, this meeting is adjourned as well. City Council will resume at 7 p.m. So you have 12 minutes, everyone. Thank you.